This was my reaction directly after having watched this film.
That is one big pile of shit.
Alice Through the Looking Glass is the sequel to the reboot-quel. I say that because it's like a reboot and a sequel at the same time of Alice in Wonderland that came out in 2010. And they decided to make a sequel to that. And it's not directed by Tim Burton anymore. It's directed by the guy that brought you the newer Muppet movies, Muppets Most Wanted and the Muppets movie from 2011, which was very good. The sequel, not quite as much. And he directed this sequel to the Tim Burton directed reboot-quel of Alice in Wonderland. And this movie is basically about how Alice goes back to Wonderland, or Underland as they call it in this reboot, and she finds out that Mad Hatter is sick because he thinks his family is still out there and he wants to find them. He has this gut feeling inside of him that he thinks his family is still out there because his family was killed when he was younger, as they explained in the first movie, and he wants to find this family. So basically Alice has to go back in time to find his family and bring restoredness to... that's not a word. So guys, this movie, Alice in Wonderland, is one of my favorite Disney movies. This movie, to me, is incredible. I love it so much. I saw this movie when I was a little kid, and I was just blown away by how weird and bizarre it was. Because it's such a different movie. Is there anything deep about Alice in Wonderland? No. Is there any meaning behind it? No. The whole thing is nonsensical, dreamlike nonsense. The whole thing literally makes you feel like you're on an acid trip. That's the point of Alice in Wonderland. The entire thing is complete nonsensicalness. That's what Alice in Wonderland is. I see why people don't really regard Alice in Wonderland as one of the best Disney movies, because I can understand why people wouldn't want to watch Alice in Wonderland if there's nothing deep about it, if there's no point to it. But that's one of the things that makes it great for me. I think Alice in Wonderland is so unique and incredible, and it's one of my favorite Disney movies because of how strange and bizarre it is. The amount of bizarreness in the movie blew my mind when I first saw it. I thought it was hysterical, I thought it was amazing, and I still do think it's amazing. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. So when Tim Burton rebooted it and also sequelized it in 2010, I hated that movie. That movie is such a pile of crap. There's barely anything redeemable about it. I literally hate it more than a lot of people did. And the fact that the same company brought us this Alice in Wonderland reboot-quel just blows my mind. Tim Burton seems like the most perfect person to direct an Alice in Wonderland film because he brought us a nonsensical movie like Beetlejuice. Tim Burton is an artist, he's a strange man, but no, he thought that Alice in Wonderland needed a plot. It needed to be an epic, it needed to have character depth, because it gave Mad Hatter a backstory in that movie. He thought that was necessary for the Alice in Wonderland universe, because clearly, when he watched the original Alice in Wonderland cartoon, he had no idea what the point of it was. He didn't understand the magic of that film and what made it so great. So he made this movie and made it more like an epic and tried to put sense into the Alice in Wonderland universe. And it absolutely did not work. I hate that movie. And Alice Through the Looking Glass is even worse. My gosh, this movie was horrible. I was so surprised by how horrible this movie was. I didn't think it would be as bad as it was. This movie is literally terrible. Let's start off with the cast first, because there's a lot of stuff I need to talk about in this movie. Mia Wasikowska, however you say that name, plays Alice in this movie. And just like in the first movie, she's so bland and so uninteresting. It just baffles me how this performance is so half-assed. Like literally, when she's like flying through this space-time thing, she should be like really interested in this. Like she's flying on this giant thing, and her face is just like this. Even her normal facial expressions are bland. You don't care about this hero. You don't care about her at all because she's so bland and boring, even though that's what Alice isn't supposed to be. In the cartoon, the character was totally interesting. She was curious, but she also tried to stay level-headed in the dream she was having. And in this movie, she's nothing like that. She's just bland and boring. And Johnny Depp in this movie, oh my goodness. Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter was atrocious. He was so bad! In the first movie, he didn't work either, because he constantly changed accents in every scene, and his performance was way too over the top and annoying. And he's even worse in this movie. So annoying in this film, and you honestly want him to die in this movie. Johnny Depp, what are you doing? I love you in a lot of movies, like Pirates of the Caribbean and Edward Scissorhands, but what are you doing in this piece of crap? What are you doing with your career? You're throwing it down the drain. What are you doing, Johnny Depp? What idiot saw this character from the cartoon and decided, yes, we need to give that guy a backstory. We need to have his parents die by a dragon. Yeah, because we need character depth for this nonsensical guy who celebrates unbirthdays and asks Alice if a raven is like a writing desk. We need a backstory for that guy because that's totally necessary. One of the things I hate most about this movie is that it gives backstories to all the characters. And one of the best things about the original Alice cartoon is that none of the characters got backstories. The world was so mysterious, and that made sense. Because in that version, Wonderland was Alice's dream, and it was supposed to be nonsensical. It was supposed to be a dream. But then Tim Burton decided to make it into a epic movie where it's a real fantasy world and it's not Alice having a dream. So he tried to put sense into it. He tried to make backstories to all these characters, like the Queen of Hearts played by Helena Bonham Carter, who's super annoying in this film, Anne Hathaway, who plays the White Queen, who wasn't even a part of the original Alice in Wonderland. They have this whole backstory with this tart thing where they ate tarts or something. I don't even remember what that was because it was so dumb, and they tried to make it like a heartfelt thing in this movie, and it was terrible. I hated it so much. Like, why do we need backstories to these characters? There's time travel in this movie. And literally when the Queen of Hearts was little, the reason her head blew up is because she fought over some tarts with the White Queen, and then she got her head slammed into a statue. What? What? It's so dumb because it ruins the magic of the original Alice in Wonderland cartoon. No characters in this movie are likable. I'm serious. I wanted all of them to die. Sure, I enjoyed the Cheshire Cat in the original Alice in Wonderland movie. I felt like he was portrayed well, even if the movie surrounding him was trash and nothing like Alice in Wonderland should be, but he's barely in this movie. The Cheshire Cat, the hare, the mouse, the March Hare, they are barely in this movie. I'm serious. Most of the very iconic Alice in Wonderland characters are barely in this film, and they do nothing. I mean, they are in the film, but they do absolutely nothing in this movie. They're barely in it. I couldn't even believe it. Why would you take such iconic characters from the Alice in Wonderland lore and have them be totally useless? And the Time character, I know a lot of people really liked him in this movie and thought of him as the saving grace, but I thought he was really annoying in this movie. I didn't even care about his character. And there's literally random cameos from other actors in this movie, like Andrew Scott makes a cameo, Moriarty from Sherlock. I love Moriarty in Sherlock. Andrew Scott played him so well. He's an incredible, amazing villain. But in this movie, he has one freaking scene. I mean, why did you sign up for that one scene, Andrew Scott? I don't understand why you're in this movie. What are you doing with your career besides Sherlock? All the other stuff you've been in have been not that good. I like Spectre, but your character sucked in it. What are you doing with your career, Andrew Scott? It makes me so angry that the modern generation has to grow up with these films. And also for an Alice in Wonderland movie, this movie barely has any humor. This movie is mainly super serious, and it's trying to be an epic, and it's so dumb. It's like, why would you make an Alice in Wonderland story super serious? And even the time travel aspect of this movie is so convoluted and strange and weird. I had no idea what was going on half the time. And you may be saying, hey, wouldn't you like that because the Alice in Wonderland universe is about nonsensicalness? No, I don't like it because this film is trying to be taken seriously. This movie is trying to be an epic. It's trying to make an actual story with the Alice in Wonderland universe, yet it makes all this time travel stuff super convoluted and hard to follow. Isn't this movie made for kids? I couldn't even follow the time travel stuff half the time. It was so confusing and messed up. I mean, the original cartoon is such a hysterical movie. I've laughed so hard at that movie, but this movie has no humor at all. It's not funny, and when it tries to be funny, it fails so badly. It's why do you need to make Alice in Wonderland so serious and bereft of any fun? That's what this movie is. It's literally such a disgrace to what Alice in Wonderland should have been. That's what this movie is. It's such a disgrace to what Alice in Wonderland should have been. It's so stupid. And there's also this other story that happens in the real world that Alice has to deal with. It's like signing over some ship or something. I don't even know what that was, but I remember Haymitch was there and he was a big part of it. He was supposed to be Alice's fiance in the first Alice movie, and he was involved with this movie again, and I didn't care about that plot at all. I forgot about it in the middle of the movie. It was so dumb and stupid, and it was just... Calm down. And another thing about this movie that really sucks is the visuals were not very good. I remember the visuals being really good in the first film. I remember that being a really impressive thing about that movie, and it was one of the things that actually made that film at least a tiny bit tolerable, even if it was a piece of crap. In this movie, the visuals look terrible. There are so many times when you tell it's an obvious green screen. They look so bad. They're not Gods of Egypt or a Legion level of terrible, but they're pretty bad. I was so upset by that because at least the first one had nice visuals. This has nothing. The story of this movie is literally so lazy, and it's such a sequel story. It's just like Disney was like, hey, the first Alice movie made a lot of bank. Let's make a super dumb, lazy story and make it into a movie, because that's literally what this movie is. And you're constantly reminded that this movie didn't need to exist. We didn't need a sequel to the movie. We didn't even need the 2010 movie to exist. We just needed this movie. This is all we needed. We needed no other adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. This movie is perfect on its own. We needed nothing else. Also, it's so sad that this was Alan Rickman's last movie. The guy had one scene as a caterpillar, and it's his very last movie. Why is this your last movie, Alan Rickman? You are one of the best actors ever. I love you. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman. You've done so many iconic, amazing performances. It's such a shame that this movie had to be your last. It's so sad, and he only had one scene in the entire movie, and he's barely there, and he just phoned it in. It's really sad that this had to be his last film. And also, the director of this movie, what happened to you? Did you get your head slammed on a rock so hard that you lost brain cells? I loved the first Muppet movie he did. I thought that movie was hysterical, and it was such a great return to form for Muppets, and I cried in that movie because I grew up with the Muppets, and I love that movie so much, and he just lost his sanity with this movie. What happened? Guys, I literally couldn't stand this movie. This is one of my least favorites of the year. I didn't even think it would be this bad. I thought this movie would have at least some redeeming qualities, but there's nothing about this movie. This movie made me feel so angry. There is nothing redeemable about this film. Guys, I'm gonna give Alice Through the Looking Glass an F. I'm surprised too. I didn't think this movie would stoop that low. I honestly hated everything about this film. This movie is a disgrace to Alice in Wonderland, and I can't believe Disney even made this movie. Like, Disney's been doing so well with their movies. I mean, they own Marvel, they own the Star Wars universe, they've been doing so well and doing such great movies, and then you have this Alice in Wonderland film in the midst of all that, and it's just like, what? Guys, if you saw Alice Through the Looking Glass, be sure to comment your thoughts on it, be sure to like this video, be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and oh my gosh, I couldn't believe how bad this movie was. And I'm probably going to have a review for Jack Reacher this weekend. You know, at least I can review a good film, hopefully. If Jack Reacher doesn't end up being disappointing, at least I can review a really good movie, because I've been reviewing a lot of bad movies recently, so... Okay, bye.